Hello and welcome to my channel. If you've been here before, welcome back. My name is Alfonso Peluso and I'm a Studio Associate Professor in the College of Architecture at IIT, the home of the legendary Mies van der Rohe, and I'm adjunct faculty at Columbia College in the Interior Architecture program. Shout out to all my students. I hope you're doing well. We just finished up a spring semester at Columbia College, or at IIT, and Columbia College finishes up this week. So congrats to all my students, and I wish you all well as you wrap up the semester. Today we're gonna look at Enscape for Rhino, and you see an image that was created pretty quickly in Enscape. So you get these realistic images that can be created pretty quickly, and we can move around and we can see the wind in the trees. So this real-time rendering engine stuff is pretty great. So I'm looking forward to diving into Enscape with you. Alright, on another note, weather in Chicago, it's crazy today. We haven't had much of a spring, it's been pretty cold. But today it's 86 degrees right now. It's supposed to go up to 88. So that's pretty unusual for a early May day. All right, so what are we gonna cover? All right, here's our little outline. We're gonna go through all of this stuff right here. We'll go through it one by one so you'll get to see it happen one by one. All right, so let's start with downloading a student version. If you're a student, you can download a student version of Enscape for free, which is great. So let's take a look at that. So if we go over to Enscape here, I'm at enscape3d.com, enscape3d.com, and I can go to pricing. Now for pricing, it just shows up as these regular 14-day trials, a floating license, a fixed seat license. We're looking for student pricing. So under FAQ here, under FAQs, if we go here, it says, is there a student license or academic license? And I can go to that pull down and I can click here. I'm going to open that in a new tab. And I can click on get my EDU license, get my educational license. I can click on that, and here you see it's free of charge, valid for 24 months. So if you're a student, educator, or you're looking to get it into your classroom, it's free of charge. So that's really great. Thank you to the people at Enscape. Now what I can say about Enscape is they recently merged with Chaos Group, and Chaos Group, those are the folks that brought us V-Ray or bring us V-Ray. So looking for good things to happen between V-Ray and Enscape. Who knows what that's going to be? I'm not sure, but they have merged together. Okay, if you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and click on the red subscribe button. Click on the bell to receive all the notifications. If you're into digital design, I have a video for you. I'm sure of that. So you can check out all my videos on my YouTube page and become a subscriber. Alright, also connect with me on Instagram at my first name Alfonso _ my last name Peluso. See what I'm up to with my students. This is some images of the work that was just recently completed at IIT, so you can always see what I'm up to. Alright, let's get back over to Rhino. So we are going to make a new file in Rhino. So I'm just going to go to File, New. Go ahead and save that last one. And we're going to choose Large Objects Inches. Okay, Large Objects Inches. So we're building something bigger than a truck. So that's why we're using large objects, and we're just keeping our units in inches. Alright, I'm going to make the perspective view current, maximize that, and I'm going to go ahead and set up my grid. So I'm going to type in DOC, and I'm going to make my grid, make the grid line count 100, I'll make the minor grid line spacing every 12 inches. I'll make the major grid lines every 10 minor, so every 10 feet. And I'll make my grids or my snap spacing 12 inches as well. So 100, 12, 10, and 12. Okay, that's giving me these heavy lines every 10 feet. So I'm going to go ahead and model some geometry. So modeling your geometry is really important in Rhino, just keeping organized, knowing what you're creating, modeling a little bit at a time, not bringing in a whole entire model at once and trying to render it in Enscape. I wouldn't recommend that. I'd recommend bringing in little by little and applying materials and things like that. So take it slow, and you'll take away the risk of it crashing on you. That's kind of typical stuff. All right, let's take layer 1, and we're gonna call this floor, and I have that as current. My grid snap is on. I'm gonna type in box, and I'm snapping through the grid, and I'm making this 40 by 20. So you see I have 4 large grid lines in the Y direction and 2 heavy grid lines in the X direction. Alright, and I'm going to pull that down and make it -6 inches. Alright, so that's in the negative direction there, 6 inches. I'll take layer 2, we're going to call this wall, make it current, and I should say, when you're working with renderings, you're naming layers and you're thinking about them per material. So a floor will have a different material than a wall. Let's go ahead and create that wall. So I'm going to type in box again. And I'll pick this grid line over here. And since I'm not at 0, 0, 0, I'm going to use my at key. So at 20 feet, that's in the X, comma, 6 inches in the Y. And then I'm going to make that 10 feet tall. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and copy that. Copy it from its endpoint to the endpoint of that floor. It's a little off there. No, it's on. Sometimes you got to make things shaded to see these a little bit better. So, yeah, I can see that pretty good right now. Alright, next we're going to make our roof. Okay. And what I'm going to do for the roof is I'm just going to copy the floor. So I'm going to copy it from its very bottom, so that endpoint, to the very top of that wall. And I'm going to select it and right click over the word roof in the layers and change object layer. So that's on the roof layer. And the last thing I need is my, we'll call it grass, since it's going to be grass in this model. I'm going to zoom out quite a bit here and make another box. So notice as I went through these, I was making the layer current each time. And I'll make that -6 inches. Now that needs to go down 6 inches because right now it's flush with the top of the floor, and I need it to go down an extra 6 inches. So I'm going to type in move, and I'm going to choose vertical equals yes, point to move it from. I'm going to go ahead and pick this top point and move it down to the bottom point. Alright, there you go. So that's our model. So that's what we're going to be working with in Enscape. So this is a good point to save. So we'll save this. Alright, fantastic. Okay, so where do we go from here? Let's take a look at our little outline. So we've downloaded the student version, or we looked at downloading the student version. We haven't looked at the Enscape Toolbar yet, but we did model some Rhino geometry. So the Enscape Toolbar, so I have that showing here under Enscape. Okay, so what I can do, if you don't see that, is you won't see it by default actually. So if I type in Toolbar, I would want to check on my Enscape toolbar, and it's probably going to show up right behind this window. And then you could take it and you could dock it into your main menu there. So you just want to type in toolbar. You want to be under Enscape Rhino, and you want to choose Enscape. Okay. All right, so that's the toolbar. So we'll go through some of these buttons in the toolbar as we get more into Enscape, but right off the bat I can click on the first button, which is starts Enscape in a separate window. It takes a little bit to load up, and there you can see that that's loaded. And what I'm going to do is just kind of position it off to the side a little bit here so we can see what's happening in Rhino, and we can see what's happening in Enscape. So right now there different things are happening. I'm moving around. I'm just using my right mouse button right now. I'm just holding down my right mouse button, and I'm orbiting inside of Enscape. Okay, and I'm going to go to, there's a little question mark button which brings out the help panel. So if you're a gamer, which unfortunately I'm not, because I'd be more, if I was, I think I'd be more in tune with some of these commands on the keyboard. So there's the W command, which is going to zoom in, and the S command, which is going to zoom out. Let's move my model over a little bit. Okay, so W is going to zoom in, S is going to zoom out. I'm pretty far away from my model right now, so I'm gonna zoom into this. Okay, so W is moving in, S is moving out, and there's a way that you can change the speed that these things are moving in and out. A is panning to the right. D is panning, well, A was panning to the left, I should say. D is panning to the right. Okay, so that's one way you can move around, and you can see all these different ways to move around on the right hand side. And another thing that goes with the mouse is the daylight, which we'll get into in a little while, or the sunlight. If I hold shift and I move my mouse from side to side, I'm moving around that sun. Okay, I want to get a better view. There we go. So you can see as I move it around, the clouds are rolling in and out. And we'll get into some settings for the sky and the clouds. Alright, so that's just what's happening in Enscape. It's just rendering in real time. I can move in and out. I can move side to side. Alright, and there, like I mentioned, there's a place to change the speed at which things move when you're orbiting in and out, and that's going to be under settings. So I can go under settings in the upper right, and that's going to be under input. And then there's mouse speed, there's mouse smoothing. I'm just going to keep everything at the default for right now, but you can experiment with some of those. Okay, so that's one way to navigate. Now I'm better at navigating in, I can navigate in Enscape and I can navigate in Rhino. I'm a little better at navigating inside of Rhino. So what I can do is I can click the third button here, and that's going to match my Rhino. What it's going to do when I turn that on and off is it's going to match my Rhino. So that was on before, so it was matching my Rhino. So it was kind of freaking Enscape out a little bit. So the best way to do this actually is not to have Enscape sitting on top of the Rhino window. Okay, and there is a setting to make it sit on top of the Rhino window, which I should say you will want to turn on, or else this Enscape window keeps going away from you. So let's look at our little outline. So we've looked at downloading the student version. We've looked at the Enscape toolbar. We've modeled some Rhino geometry. we've launched Enscape and we've gone through some navigation and some sun angles, but we're going to come back to the sun angles. So first of all, how to pin window on top. How to pin window on top. That's the Enscape window. You're going to go to Settings and Preferences. Okay, so we're going to go to our little gear, which is our settings, and we're going to go to Preferences, and that's Pin Enscape Window on Top. Okay, I'm unchecking it just to let you see what happens. So if I go over to Rhino, it makes the Enscape window go away, and then I have to bring the Enscape window back up. So it's a personal preference. It's up to you. This is something new in Enscape 3.3, so it is relatively new. It might be something, if you've used Enscape before, you might have to get used to it now because it is new. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that on under Preferences, Pin Enscape Window on top of Host Application. Okay, now you see I'm orbiting in Rhino and it's orbiting in Enscape. That's because I put that live button on. Okay, so that's to synchronize Enscape's camera position with Rhino. Okay, the best way to look at this is to have these side by side. Okay, this is the easiest way because then you're seeing almost exactly what you see in Rhino. You're seeing that in Enscape. Okay, so that's, and you know, there might be a little bit of delay depending on your computer. My computer seems to be handling it pretty good right now, so that's good. Okay, next we want to look at the sun angles. So two ways you can set up the sun angles. You can do it in Enscape or you can do it in Rhino. So in Enscape, remember, it's the, if we look over here at time of day, it's my right mouse button and my shift key, and I'm moving that side to side, and that's going to change that position. So let's see, we can get it to be like a nighttime view. This was pretty cool right there. That looks pretty nice. So you can get some really interesting daylight or sunlight. Okay, I'm having fun with it. I'm just going to go all the way back here. Okay, so that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is inside of Rhino. So inside of Rhino, if I type in the command sun, type in sun, and I can turn the sun on, and I can change it to manual control, and then I can position that sun. Okay, so this is another way. As I lower this down, as I get just below, I was working a little earlier where I can get like starlight. Just moving that sun around. Okay. My computer's loving that because it's really kicking on the fan. Alright, I'm going to turn this off and we'll control it through Enscape for the rest of the tutorial. Set something up here. Okay. Alright, next I believe we're going to look at the sky settings. I'm not a big fan of those default clouds. I think, you know, you're always going to give yourself away when you're using those default clouds. They're going to know what software you're working in, whether it's Enscape or Lumion usually, that you're going to see those clouds. So there's some sky settings. So we can look at the sky settings. Okay, so we can find this under the settings, and we're going to go to, now it might not be under the settings here. It's going to be under the settings in the Enscape toolbar. Okay, so this gets us back to this Enscape toolbar. So we're going to look at clicking on that. And let's see. Oh, it's not there either. So that leaves me one more place to look, which is under visual settings. Okay, so under visual settings, I'm going to go to sky, and I'm going to take down the density of the clouds, the variety of the clouds, and the cirrus amount of the clouds. And that's just going to leave me, and I'm even going to take the, well, I'm going to leave the contrails. I'm going to leave those. Okay, so this is just getting me a gradient sky, okay, which I like. I like that to start with, a gradient sky. Okay. Alright, so we've looked at the sky settings. I'm just going to save. You never know if something's going to happen. It seems pretty stable so far that I've been working in Enscape. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at view management. So we're going to actually set up a camera in Rhino, and then we're going to look at where we can find that camera in Enscape. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'm going to close the Enscape window for now, and I'm going to maximize Rhino, and I'll double click on perspective, and I'm just zooming out on all my views here. And I'm going to set up a basic eye level camera. I like my eye level cameras a little lower than eye level, so I'm going to set this eye level camera at 4'6". Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn on the camera. Now the camera that I want to turn on needs to be the perspective view camera. I'm going to turn on the perspective view camera by, I can type in camera, and I can type in show, or click on show. This is one way to do it. Another way would have been to use your hotkeys on your laptop would be function F6. On a desktop would probably be just F6. That will toggle the camera on and off. Or you can just use the command camera and then choose show. Okay, so what I'm going to do with the perspective window current again is I'm going to go over to properties, and I'm going to set the Z locations for both the camera and the target. I'm going to set those to 4'6", so that's going to be 54. 54 for both of those. So now I'm at eye level. You can see in this viewport I'm at eye level. I also want to change it to a wider angle. So here in my top viewport, I want to change this angle to be wider. So that's something you do through the lens length. So I'm going to make the lens length. I'm going to do that for the perspective view. I'm going to make the lens length 25. Okay, I'm getting a nice dramatic wide angle then. And then I'm going to go ahead and select this middle point and plan here, this middle point in the top view. And then you see there's this little grid to the upper right of the gumball. Note my gumball is turned on at the bottom of my screen. I'm going to go ahead and move that in closer. Okay. If I needed to change its position left and right in the screen, to do that I would select the target point. So if I zoom in and try to click on that point, I wouldn't use the camera up point because that rotates the camera. So if you see your camera doing this, rotating, that's bad. You can Control Z to undo that. And we can click again on that point. If it lets me, let me click off of it. Let me click on it. And I'm going to choose camera target point. So this allows me to move back and forth. And my grid snap is still on. It's better to do this without a grid snap. But this allows me to move the camera, and you're seeing it position itself right and left in the viewport. All right, so not too bad. We're getting there. So let's save this, and what's next in our agenda? I bet we're going to start looking at materials here. All right, so we haven't finished camera view management though. We've made the camera in Rhino, but we haven't looked at how to see that in Enscape. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's click on the, well, I'm going to turn off my camera, so I'm going to type in camera, hide, and I'm going to go ahead and launch the Enscape window back up. Okay, so we're going to go over to view management. Now nothing is here. It says no views available. We did make a camera in Rhino, but it's saying no views available. So what's happening is we haven't set up a named view for that camera. So I'm just going to go and minimize Enscape for a moment. And in this perspective view, I'm going to type in the command named view. And I'm going to click on the little floppy disk to save it. Oh, that didn't work. Let me try that again. Named view. I'll click on the floppy disk to save it. I think I'm gonna close Enscape to do this because something's tricking out here. It's like ending up behind it. Well, I'll keep it open and see. So this might be a little bit buggy there. So I'm gonna call this camera 01. Okay. Now that shows up in Enscape. I can double click on that and I can maximize this. So we're seeing some sense of it. I can close this help button here. I can close this view management. So there is our view. I'm gonna move this sun around a little bit. I'm going the other way with it. Okay, I'm gonna try that. All right, we got a nice blue sky. We got a little bit of sun, but now everything is just white. Okay, so we're gonna look at setting up some materials, and we are going to start with something for the walls. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and minimize this window, make it a little bit smaller here. I'm gonna set these up side by side, so I'm gonna push this to the right, set up my Rhino side by side, make my perspective view current. Okay, so for materials, because that's what we're looking at, right? We're looking at materials. Okay, so for materials, we want to make the materials, or we need to make the materials first over in Rhino. So if I go over to my layers, we're going to set these up by layers. And if you haven't made materials before in Rhino and you want an in-depth tutorial, you could go to my YouTube page and you can search up materials, Rhino materials. Rhino materials will get you pretty far. So you can check that video out. So we're going to go to wall, and I'm going to click on, there's a little white circle there. I'm going to click on that white circle, and I'll rename this. I'll call this walls. I'm going to change this to custom. I am going to make a color for that wall. And I'm just going to make it a really bright fuchsia right now, and we'll look at changing the color in Enscape. Okay. So there is an enable, disable live. Okay, and I've been having a little bit of trouble with this. It might be because I have Grasshopper open. That might be the issue. But I'm having a little bit of trouble with this one where it says enable/disable live updates in Enscape. So if you don't want live updates in real time, if you don't want that, you would turn this off. Okay, now it's supposedly off. It was on. Okay, but it's not giving me my live updates. It's not showing the walls in color. So I wonder if that has something to do with my Grasshopper. It probably does. So maybe we'll close. It's not something I really want to troubleshoot live on a video, but maybe we'll close Grasshopper and we'll close our Enscape window, and we'll open our Enscape window back up. Okay, so now those walls have been updated. So we'll see if we can get some live updates going a little bit later. So I want to make those walls, I want to make it an Enscape material now. I had to make it a material first in Rhino. I just had to do that. Now I want to make it an Enscape material, and I want to adjust its color and its glossiness and reflectivity. I want to get the sun to save its position here. Okay, so let's go over to wall. This is our wall material, and for type, we're going to change this type to Enscape Material. And we'll click OK. And now we're going to look at another button from the Enscape Toolbar here, which is Tune Materials in the Project. So this is our material editor. And you see the walls comes over with the color that we chose. I'm going to go ahead and change it to a different color. Okay, so that changes in the Enscape preview in real time. And I'm going to take down the roughness which starts to add back in some of the, or not add back in, but starts to give it some reflective quality. And I'm going to turn up the specular, which is going to give it even more reflective quality. If it lets me turn that up more. Okay. If I took the roughness all the way up, it would be completely matte. If I take it all the way down, it's going to be really reflective. Okay. Not a big fan of the term roughness for this, but it is what it is. We have what we have, so we're going to go with that. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and make a floor material. Okay, so let's go ahead and close this. Just saving as I go here. So for my floor material, I'm going to click on the little dot there. And let's see if we get this. Let's see if closing that grasshopper window helps us update in real time for us. So I'm going to go to the color. Well, I'm going to name it. I'm going to call it floor. And I'm going to go to color and make it a really bright color again. And I'll click OK. And it didn't update in real time in Enscape. So, not sure what it is, but I'm having a little glitch. It might be because I had Grasshopper open. I'm not entirely sure. But I can try something. I'm going to open up another file here. Okay, so I'm going to try this in real time. I'm going to try changing the material of this column, and then we'll go back to our other file and see if we can change the materials in real time. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to choose this color to be orange for the column. Oh, that was the layer color. I want the material color. So I'm going to change it back from Enscape to custom, and I'm going to change the color of it. And give that an OK. Okay, so you see that changing in real time in Enscape. So I'm going to go back to my other file and see if I can get that to change in real time in Enscape. Okay. Okay, so there's our floor, and we're going to make a grass material in a little while, so we'll see if we can get that to work in real time. Let's just manipulate this floor color. This floor color. There we go, that updated. So it's updating live now. I'm not sure what it is. Hopefully it's working on your end. Alright, so, but if I didn't want it to update live, I would turn off this enable, disable live updates in Enscape. Okay, enough about that. Alright, so let me make this floor material an Enscape material. And over in the Enscape Material Editor, I'm going to change that floor. I'll change its color to be white. And I'm going to change its, I'm going to bring down its roughness, see if I can get some reflections on it. There we go. Okay, it's reflecting. I'm going to bring up the specular on it. Okay, so we have it reflecting nicely, so we're going to leave that. And now we're going to make another material. We'll see if it updates in real time. So we're going to make the grass material. I'm going to save this. I'm pretty crazy with the saving. I don't know, it's just something I do. Alright, so I'm going to click on this one, and I'm going to call this one grass. Now when I call it grass, it's going to make it a grass material automatically in Enscape, which is pretty neat. Let's make this custom. We'll see that in a little bit. Let's make this a grass color. Okay. Let's click OK. Alright. It did not update in real time. Alright. Fun stuff. Let me get my sun back to where I had it. Let me get my view back. Okay, so let's make the Enscape Material grass and get that showing up in the Enscape window. So let's go ahead and make it Enscape. And we'll go over to the Enscape. So I'm going to close the Enscape window because I need that to update. Okay, pretty green. Pretty green. We're going to have to desaturate that. So let's go to the material editor. And you see it's got the grass symbol there already. So it allows me when it is the grass, and if I didn't get the grass symbol, I can go here. So these are some default materials, and we're not going to go too far into materials today. We're going to leave that for another video. But grass, that's what this was automatically defaulted to, and it has height variation, and it has height. I can get that to be poking through the floor, which we don't want. But I'm going to change the color by desaturating this, even more desaturated. So to desaturate even more, I can go to advanced, and I can pick a more grayish green. Desaturate that a little more. I'm always telling my students, make sure you desaturate your grass. Okay, and we're going to lower the height down on that. We don't want it sticking up. Okay. Let's change a few things. Let's change the wall color. A little bit more blue. Okay. Alright, things are looking pretty good. Move that sun around a little bit. There we go. It seemed to update after I made the Enscape window current, so that's interesting. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. We got rid of all that color bleed that was happening on the ceiling. Alright, so what's next? Let's close this. And let's go ahead and we gotta load Grasshopper back up to look at our little window there. Okay, so next thing we can look at is something called visual settings. And you can look at visual settings, and there's something called outline. Some people like their renderings to look more sketchy. So we can look at that. Okay, so under visual settings, and we can go to main. Make sure we're under main. And it says style, and there's none. You can do a white style, which takes all the material color away, just makes it white. You can do polystyrol, which lets light in through all the objects, so it actually lets the daylight into the space. I imagine it looks different from an interior. And if you're looking to see what these do, it says that here. So polystyrol makes the rendering look like polystyrol. I don't know what polystyrol is. Might be lost in the translation. The sunlight scatters through thin geometry, so it'll scatter through thin geometry. Our geometry is pretty thick right now, and we don't even have a glass on there. And then there's light view. We can get a heat map. Okay, we can get a nice little heat map and see how heat's being, how light is being affected and bouncing around off certain objects. And let's go ahead and change that back to none. And under none, we can change the outlines. So I can add some outlines, so I can get some edges on my rendering. If I turn that way up, it starts to get pretty cartoony. It starts to look like I'm in SketchUp. Okay, we're gonna take that down all the way. All right. Next, I think we're gonna look at the Asset Manager. So we're going to look at the Asset Manager. That's the next thing we're going to look at. So this is pretty cool. We're going to add people and trees into the scene. And we're going to do it a couple ways. We'll actually do it three different ways. So I'm going to go ahead and click on a couple ways I can do it. I can do it this way through the toolbar in Rhino, or I can do it this way in the toolbar in Enscape Window. So I'm going to click on that. Click on this little sidebar button here. I'm going to go ahead and move this over, and I'm going to make my window big. Okay. So this isn't the correct view for some reason. If I do camera 1, this is the correct view. Okay. And I'll go back to the asset library here. And there's this little infinity sign, which is the categories. So I'm going to start with the categories of people. So this does take a little while to load, depending on the speed of your computer. My computer is fairly fast, and it still took a while to load. I'm going to choose this sitting person, and I'm just going to place this person just by itself. So I'm going to go ahead and place it. And then there is an apply changes at the bottom right. I can click on apply changes. Okay, that person shows up. I want to turn this person around to be facing me. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the rotate in the upper left. Okay, I'm going to select the person. And you see all my 3 rotate axes. You got the Z axis, you got the X axis, and you got the Y axis. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate this in the Y and choose apply changes. Okay, so that's one quick way of doing that. And with people, these people are great because they're to scale. There's so many different types of people in this asset editor. But what I would recommend for everyone is to render the people and the trees out separately so that you can do Photoshop work to those trees and people. Okay, make sure you do that so they don't look, because they look a little stiff to begin with, but you can really make them look great in Photoshop. And I have a people tutorial in Photoshop, so if you look at my YouTube channel, you'll find a video on placing people in Photoshop. Alright, so that's one way to do it. Another way would be to make a plane that gets populated with people or whatever assets you're using. So there's a button here. There was the single asset placement, and then there is the multi-asset placement. So I'm going to click on the multi, and there's 3 different ways to do it. You can make a rectangle, a circle, or you can pick a plane to apply it to. Rectangle and circle, those are pretty much the same. So I'm going to go ahead and click on rectangle, and I'm going to make a rectangle on the back here. And I'm going to change its width. Get some people inside the space a little bit too. Okay, now I have to tell it, because it's going to auto-populate that plane with the people that I select. So I have to select people from this menu here, and it starts to populate. You see that happening? Oh, it went onto the roof, which is actually pretty cool. That's super interesting. Alright, so I'm just adding in people here. If I scroll down a little bit. Is there any more people sitting? So as I add here, they start to get populated. Okay. That's good enough. Now there's a couple options. There's random, there's jitter, which will shuffle where the people are, and there, so I can keep going back and forth. There's uniform, which puts them on a grid. Oh, that's just this little pop-up there. Uniform puts them on a grid, so if you wanted a grid of trees, let's say, you could do that. I don't want a grid of trees, a grid of trees. So I'm just going to make this random. And then there's the density, how dense I want this. I'm going to change the width of this so that we don't have people on our roof. Okay. Alright, so there's the density. I want it a little more dense. Okay, and then there's a regenerate, which regenerates the randomness of it. Alright, let's go with that. We'll confirm placement and we'll apply changes. It's thinking. Okay, so that applied those people. It's nice to have some color in the background, some people to scale. It always makes the rendering look a lot nicer. They already have the shadows built in. I mean, that's amazing stuff there. Again, though, you want to edit some of the stuff in Photoshop. Okay, so that's one way to do that. So now let's look at doing it by, and we got reflections on the ground plane of the little pavilion here. Let's look at doing this with trees. So we're going to do that with trees. We're going to go to the category. So I'm going to close this. Oh, here's my categories. Right now it's just set to people. So by default it's infinity, right? Infinity to infinity with the categories. I'm going to click on that and I'm going to go down to vegetation. And I'm going to type in tree. Okay, so there's my trees. And we're going to place it this time, there's a little paint bucket. And we're going to place it right on that. See, it's picking different. I could place it on the wall, floor, the roof. We're going to place it on the grass area. So we're going to go ahead and click that. And it has the people checked on. So it already has those people selected, so I don't want that. So I'm going to close this out. Apply and leave. Oh, I did apply and leave. Oh, great. So we have a lot more people than we want. Alright, let's get the trees in here. Now I could click on these individually. Like I could click on this person here. And I could just hit the delete key. It's not a big deal. We just got a lot more people in the background than we wanted. Alright, just deleted some of these out. Okay, so let's see if I can search this up with tree. Okay, so it's better to first go to the tree category or the vegetation category. Okay, and then have this with tree. Alright, so I'm going to select, we're going to do our multi-asset placement. We're going to pick the top. We're going to select a bunch of these. I'm doing these very Italianate trees, these Tuscan trees. This takes a while to load. Get some regular trees, vary the color a little bit. Okay, and we want more. We want this more dense. Let's get these to. Let's add in a couple more. Okay, regenerate it a couple times. Again, I can always move these. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and apply the changes. Well, first I have to confirm placement and then apply the changes. I think it's thinking about it. Give it some time. Alright. I like to place in a couple so I can get some shadows onto the building. So let's go. I got some in the foreground here, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's go to singular placement. And let's go ahead and I'm going to choose that one. I'm going to put it over here off to the side as much as I can. Apply changes. Okay. Let me move that over. It's also kind of moving my view around here. Gotta make sure that red X axis highlights there. Okay, let's apply the changes to that. Alright, let's move this around a little bit. Alright, so we're getting some reflections. That one's not going to cast a shadow into the building because the daylight is not coming from that particular direction. Alright, so I think we've covered everything. Well, the last thing is output. We want to output this to an image. So I'm going to close this. We want to output this to a rendering. So what we can do is we can go to our visual settings. And we can go to image, and actually visual settings, we're going to go to output. Okay, so by default it's full HD, so you can set this even higher. So this is an aspect ratio of 1.78. So I'm going to change the aspect ratio a little bit by going to custom. What's Ultra HD? I'm just curious. Oh, 3840 by 2160, that's pretty high res. That's a really good high res image there. What's full HD? 1920 by 1080. Okay, so we're gonna go with custom, and we're gonna go with 2500, so a little bit higher, and I'm gonna make it 2500 by 1500. So it's a little bit of a different aspect ratio. And I can always change that in Photoshop, but I'm just getting a higher resolution image, a little bit higher than the regular HD, the full HD. Now I have an option here. I can change this to apply alpha channel, which will give me an image that has no background. Okay, so it makes a PNG with no background. Or I can export multiple images. So you have both of those to choose from. Typically it's just apply alpha channel, but we're going to go ahead and do this with export all these options here. Okay, so it's just going to do that when I close it. Okay, and then there's this little button up here, which is a screenshot. Okay, create a rendering of the current Enscape view. And then there are batch renderings. So you have these options here to choose from. So let's go ahead and choose the screenshot. It's also Shift plus F11. It's probably Shift function F11 on ours. Alright, so let's click on that. And it's going to save it. Okay, so if I go to that window where it was all saved, I have the image. Okay, so that's the PNG image. This time it's with the sky because I didn't click the PNG transparent background. And I can click on next. And that's my alpha, so I can get my background mask. And then I have my depth PNG. I haven't figured out what to do with this one yet, but it looks promising. And just showing things in the foreground with more clarity. And then I have my material ID. So by material, it's coloring all these objects by their material. So if you want to change those in Photoshop, you can do that. And then I also have my object ID, which is every single object has a different color. So you have that available to you. Alright, let's close this up. So we've covered everything that we wanted to cover in this video. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a like. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, you'll see my head will pop up in the lower left, or the upper left. And I'm going to put some videos in the upper right and the lower right for you guys to take a look at. Alright, thanks for watching.